Hey everyone, Mary Berger here with Computer Diva. I wanted to tell you about a particular appointment I had this morning that was really serious, and I think the information from this appointment was serious enough to pass on to everyone. I got a phone call yesterday afternoon from a gentleman. He wasn't a client of mine, but he wanted to hire me to come fix his computer. His computer was actually being held ransom. He got a message on the screen saying that his data had been encrypted and that in order for him to get his data unencrypted, he had to pay a fee, pay a ransom, or else his data would remain encrypted and he would not be able to decrypt it. So he called me and I went over there this morning, and indeed he did have a ransomware virus on his computer. So what is ransomware? Basically, like I said, it's a virus that holds your computer hostage for a ransom. A lot of different variants of this virus have been going around lately, probably over the past couple of years. I've dealt with several clients with this virus and have cleaned it up successfully and gotten their data back. But in this case, it was a little dire. We weren't able to get his data back. So I wanted to tell you about the situation to make sure that you don't fall prey to this kind of ransomware. So basically, how do you get the ransomware? A lot of times it's done by what is called a drive-by download. You go to a website that, unbeknownst to you, is infected. And you might have an outdated plugin in your browser, such as Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Firefox. And the virus actually takes advantage of the vulnerabilities in those outdated plugins and loads itself onto your computer without your knowledge until you get the pop-up screen saying that you're infected and you're being held for ransom. So with that said, okay, so what is a browser plugin? A browser plugin, basically, it's a piece of software that delivers special content, such as videos or music or some sort of action on the website. Examples would be Flash, Adobe Flash, or Java. Those are both browser plugins that deliver special content on a website. Those are constantly being exploited because the people who make the viruses are constantly finding holes in those browser plugins that they could use to kind of slip their viruses in. So if you know, so as you know, if you own a computer, a Windows computer anyway, Java is constantly popping up in the lower right-hand corner of your computer requesting to be updated. Adobe Flash is also constantly requesting updates, and it's because of these vulnerabilities, the manufacturers of these plugins are basically writing new code to make the plugins safer and safer. So my advice to you is to always update those. So anyway, Google Chrome, which is a browser, is working now with Adobe to embed Flash into the Google Chrome browser, and they keep it up to date. Google Chrome is updated in the background on your computer. You don't even notice it. So anytime there's a change to Flash, Google Chrome is updated, and that update is pushed out to your computer. So let me tell you about what happened when I got to my client's home this morning. He was actually a CPA. He's a retired CPA, sold his practice, yet he still has a handful of customers that he does tax returns for. So here we are a week from the tax filing deadline, and he calls me and says his computer is being held for ransom and he has one more tax return to do and he needs to get that off of his computer. So anyway, I walk into his office and I sit down at his computer, and indeed he had the screen up there that said this is the CryptoWall 3.0 virus and his data was being held for ransom. His data had already been encrypted. That happens right away when that virus gets on your computer. And the only way to decrypt that data is to pay the ransom and hope that the people who made the virus, who by the way are criminals, Don't have any, preconceived notions that these are college kids sitting in their basement just having fun. These viruses are made by organized crime. They're criminals, and they're making big money off of doing it. So the way to get your information decrypted is to pay the ransom, and then they will give you a code that you plug into this screen, and it will then decrypt your data. But come on, we're talking about organized crime and criminals. Do you really think they're going to give you a code? There's no way that they can be found by the common person. So it's no skin off their nose if they don't give you a code. They've got your money. They got what they were looking for. So with that said, I started out by running some virus scans on his computer, and I definitely did indeed find the CryptoWall 3.0 virus on his computer, and we were able to delete it. But there's no guarantee that you're going to get every single little bit and piece of that type of virus off your computer. So my suggestion to him was that we take the computer back to factory defaults. This was a Windows 8.1 computer. So the software was built into the computer to take it back to factory defaults. So we were covered there. We already knew that all his data had been encrypted. The one thing that kind of saved us on his tax software was the data was being held in a special type of database. So we can actually open up the tax software, and we did a backup of all his returns that he had done so far. So we at least got that data backed up onto an external drive. However, this particular person did not make a habit of backing up the data on his computer. So all his Word files, all his Excel documents, they were all encrypted and they were toast. We could open them, but it was just garbage inside. So unfortunately, since he didn't back up his computer, he lost all that data. So we had to take his computer back to factory defaults. Took us maybe about a half hour to run that process. It wasn't that bad. Then we had to go through the process of downloading all the Windows updates, and we had to reinstall his virus software, configure it, make sure it was working. I should say antivirus software. Made sure his printer was working. We had to put his tax software back on. We had to basically go through and make sure everything was reset up, because, taking your computer back to factory defaults means it's back in the state it was when you took it out of the box, when you brought it home from the store. So he lost all his data except for his tax returns, which we did manage to recover. But the lesson here is back up your data. Now, the thing about these ransomware viruses is they will encrypt data that is not only on your hard drive, but it will also encrypt data that is on any sort of drive attached to your computer. So in a network environment, in a business network environment, it's going to also encrypt any data that might be possibly on the file server. I actually ran into that about a year ago with a customer because the file server drive was a mapped drive on the individual computers. The CryptoWall virus was able to get into those drives and encrypt all that data as well. Thank goodness we had backups. So a good safety measure when you're dealing with these types of viruses is to have a backup that is totally disconnected from your computer. And whether that means you take your external drives and you let the data back up and then you disconnect it from your computer, or what's even better is to use an online backup service such as Mozy or Carbonite. So far, the CryptoWall virus cannot get into those online backup services. And the nice thing about those online backup services is if it actually was able to do a backup after your computer became infected, and that infected data was transferred over to your Mozy backup or your Carbonite backup, those services also have historical versions of your data. So even though the most current copy of your data may be encrypted on the online backup service, you can go back a couple of days to prior to when you got the virus and recover data that is unencrypted. So for my purposes, I always recommend the 3-2-1 backup method. That means always having 3 copies of your data on at least 2 different sources, with one of those sources being off-site or disconnected from your computer. If your data means anything to you, you'll deploy that. And especially if you're in a business environment, it's critical to do that. So that was the skinny on what happened to my client this morning. And we got him back up and running. He is now processing his tax returns. Unfortunately, he lost every single bit of data except for those tax returns. And it's an important lesson. It's an expensive lesson. It was a heartbreaking lesson for him to have to go through. But these viruses are prevalent out there on the internet. You need to make sure your computer is always as up-to-date as possible. And I would suggest that your browser plugins, you keep those up-to-date, such as your Java and your Flash. I would also encourage you not to have any extra browser plugins, such as toolbars. The Yahoo toolbar, the Google toolbar, the Ask toolbar, any toolbar in your browser is a plugin and it's vulnerable to viruses. So I would keep your browsers as stripped down as possible. If anybody has any questions on any of this information, or if they want a review of their computer to see if they have outdated browsers or plugins or software in general, feel free to give me a call. My information will be below at the end of this video, and I'm happy to help. So thanks for listening, and have a great day.